would you approach, portfolio allocation, sector allocation at this point in time, given that some of the, bits you've already answered, right? The pro-cyclical trade, the anti-IT trade. What about the anti-FMCG trade that's been playing out for the last several days? Or the anti-pharma trade, which is partly the same reasons as the anti-IT trade. How would you approach portfolio allocation at this point?
So it's a pro-cyclical sort of allocation. You have
Dominantly.
Dominantly.
80% of your money, you'd say, 80% of the money you put in equity should be pro-cyclical?
It has to be overweight. You cannot be absent in any sector, because these are all big sectors, IT and FMCG, they are all big sectors. So you can't be completely zero there. You need to be dramatically underweight, and you need to be dramatically overweight in respect to the cyclicals. So that's where additional delta would come going forward.
FMCG is also an economy play. So how would you treat that differently from IT and pharma, or is it being treated like this today because of the run-up it's seen so far?
The run-up it has seen, and most of the people were over-invested there. So therefore, at least even coming to neutral, they would release a lot of money, and so therefore it would probably correct a bit more.
Within cyclicals, because that's such a broad area, right? It could be financials, it could be auto companies, it could be industrials, it could be the energy complex. What do you like the most?
Well, I think the private sector banks are a class apart.
But isn't that a safe bet, Mr. Bhat? Every brokerage report has named ICICI Bank and Axis Bank, and I'm thinking, well, do we really need a highly paid fund manager to tell us ICICI Bank and Axis Bank are good buys?
Well, I mean, if they are good buys, they're good buys. I mean, I don't think you should blame the fund managers for being...
Can it go beyond that into maybe some less identified, less
infrastructure sector where the companies have reasonably good balance sheets, not terribly over-leveraged.
L&T, BHEL?
I think so. These L&T for sure, and BHL might have run a bit too much. But the infrastructure sector, the energy sector, the engineering sector.
Do you look at energy, sort of uniformly? Like, for instance, you could look at energy from the coal point of view. You could energy from the power companies like Tata Power or the NTPC point of view. You could look at energy from the oil and gas point of view. Which one do you like in this space?
The power companies, where power companies where there is a promise of raw material being released. The receivables being released. So I think these are the companies which can do well. Plus also, I think the oil marketing companies, if there is going to be deregulation, which I think it is now or never, they have to do it now. So if they do it now, I think the oil marketing companies will be in a different plane altogether. I think that is another sort of subsector where one could be betting on.
Anuj?
Mr. Bhat, what about cement stocks? Again, these are the stocks that all through the year led the rally. I mean, not going up 6-7% in a day, but 2%, 3% a week, and some of the stocks gained big time. Any stocks, I know you don't want to talk stock specific, but within this space, would you bullish?
Yeah, I think that space is also interesting, but probably not as interesting as infrastructure and power, where the delta could be larger. But I think for the movement there would probably be followed by movement in cement also. So therefore, I think this is some sector which probably will benefit from the change in the policy regime.
Okay.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Apart from this oil subsidy, anything in particular that we'll be watching out for in the first budget?
I think the whole fixing the budget itself, like say for example, divestment versus privatization. Because if they're bold enough, they can sort of divest at least the sooty ones immediately. They can probably give that Balco and all that at some rate, which is of course very transparent. They could probably get about 60,000-70,000 crores out of that, and so that will solve the problem for the present. At least whatever is the understated debt subsidy last year, that could be sort of covered with that. Plus the subsidy regime, so that you have a sustainable budget deficit which can finance growth going forward. Because we should also expect that entrepreneurs are not going to be terribly speedy in terms of putting up new projects. Initially, I think the impetus has to be given by the government. So the government also has to think in terms of generating resources to get started the whole investment momentum. So therefore, I think they have to find money for that. So therefore, I think fixing the subsidy regime is very, very important.
So before we let you go, I have a couple of quick questions on the macro economy. Yes, it's a great plus that we have a decisive mandate and we have someone like Mr. Modi who's focused on development come to power. But do you think and believe that anyways we've bottomed out on the economy, and with the exception of maybe some uncertainty on the monsoon front, we are now in a position where up is the only way to go?
No, I don't think we can say that with any level of certainty.
Okay.
Because economies take time to revive. So I think while there is business confidence, but still I think whether it is in terms of inflation, whether it is in terms of prices on account of possible monsoon failure, I think all these things will start playing out. So I think as far as the economy is concerned, there is still possibly, it might be flat, it might not go down further, but but a V-shaped recovery is certainly not on the cards.
Not for the next few quarters? So you
not for at least a couple of
quarters?
quarters. At least a couple of quarters it will take time, because the monsoon has to play out. So I think at least for a couple of quarters you really have to put up with this sort of
So we should
economy.
revisit this question, you're saying, only in the last quarter of this calendar year?
Yeah, that is a time when really the effect of the monsoon would be felt, and you will probably see that on account of the base effect also, you will probably see some inflation easing away, and that is when you can probably expect some sort of relief on the interest rate front. Nothing can really affect interest rates immediately, I think.
Fair enough.
You spoke about the sale of public sector shares earlier. Let's divide them into two categories. One is shares that are there for sale anyway, that's Balco, that's Suti, which is anyway out there in the market. It just requires government to move on ahead with it. The other is actual divestment and privatization. Would the markets be disappointed if that didn't happen in the budget? Because going by the record, Mr. Modi in Gujarat, he's not a huge advocate of privatization or disinvestment, so it seems. So would the markets be disappointed, or have they factored that in? That's not in their priority.
Well, I think the market expects that privatization would probably be there to some extent. Okay. Not exactly the Gujarat model. Okay. Because the point is, I think quite a lot of these companies are in such a state that they need really some private sector sort of expertise. Otherwise, they will probably not take off. I think the ones which are strategic in nature, probably he will give some more freedom and ensure that they turn around. But the ones where we really, there is no strategic value by holding on to those stocks, I think there's a good case for them to privatize, and I think he might go that way.
Okay.
We had two Nifty Sensex targets come up in the show earlier today. I think Goldman Sachs has said 8,300 for the Nifty, and Bank of America Merrill Lynch has said 27,000 for the Sensex. These are 12-month targets from what I understand. Are these conservative targets, or are they realistic targets? How would you look at where you see the markets go, let's say in the more medium term, which is the next 6 to 8 months, by the end of this calendar year or 12 months from now?
Well, I think if he does the right things, especially, as I said, the 1991 sort of budget, I think 8,000 is a possibility. 8,000 is a possibility.
It's only a possibility. I'm looking at the words you're using, and you're not saying it's a probability.
No, the point is that, it all depends on how he sort of wants to present himself as a bold decision maker, or as someone who takes everybody along, all shades of opinion along. Then one step forward is not really going to change anything in India. Okay. You have to have an absolute decisive break with the past and look ahead and do things which are right for the economy, even if they are not very popular today.
Okay, so possibility, only a possibility.
I think so. We just have to wait for the budget to see whether that becomes more of a certainty, or at least a probability.
All right, Mr. Bhat, thank you very much for joining us today on Closing Bell and answering our many questions. With that